I just want to say it's good to see you and welcome back, man. Looking good, tan, rested, ready, a little smarter.
South by Southwest. Austin is a vibe. It has got to be one of the most creative cities. I've been to a lot of places in America. I've traveled abroad. I love Austin. It's this weird, eclectic city scene, art scene, tech scene. You know, you drive 10 miles out and it's the Western Plains and you can see horses running in the wide open fields. Not unusual to see a cowboy hat stroll into the live music on 6th Street. Yeah, man, South by Southwest was a vibe. I can't wait to download with you. And really the big punchline for me coming back from Austin here is the Web3 vibes are alive and well. And artists, I'll go all the way back to the creative core of blockchain and what it means for creators to have ownership over what they create. People are talking about it. People are talking about this new gold rush, this new economy that is happening. We got a lot to cover. Tell me, yeah, like what's been going on? What's the vibe in LA? And I was glad to be out of DC for a little while. Get away from politics.
I regret not getting out to South by. I mean, I usually
grab a drink. It's time for another episode of Off the Record on the Rocks. Join Michael Toner and Ankarina Lara as we discuss the latest in all things Web3, AI, metaverse, and crypto. Tune out the noise and turn up the signal as we pour ourselves into the future. Better make mine a double.
I have in the past gone out. It's been a little challenging as, you know, families get bigger and kids get older, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that always strikes me about South by is where there are literally innovators testing new technology, product, and services at South by. Like, I remember back when the idea of an Uber rickshaw was a brand new concept that they didn't want to allow any Uber or Lyft. I guess I didn't think there was Lyft back then, but no car services because it took away from the culture of Austin and how San Francisco at the time kind of holding that pinnacle, you know, sort of status of, well, this is the hub of innovation and technology. South by had been kind of trying to crack into that. And for those listeners who don't know, it really started as a music festival. And then it was a music technology festival. And you literally had guys out there talking file sharing. And this is before Napster was even a thing. There was something called Audio Galaxy Satellite. Nice. Talking about a mouthful. Remember that one? But they were like, I remember going to those guys' panels and we would have events, all these different things. You know, in a different world, I worked for CNET Networks and ZDNet Networks, and we just talk tech and talking heads and get out there and meet people. And then it starts to balloon into this all tech thing. And I don't know how much you saw that was brand new, but my experience from the old days was people were out there like there's a coming out party, if you will, like the spring is sprung. This is the real start of the new year as it applies to technology, not CES. That's like your daddy's old, really cool flat screen monitor. But South by was like, no, this is your little kid or your kid cousin's hot new thing. And everyone's young and everyone seems rich and everyone's happy. So, I mean, is it true?
Good vibes. I mean, I think when I say the Web3 vibes, I mean the collaborative spirit. I mean the innovation and the pushing of these creative technological boundaries in a lot of different ways. One of the first folks I meet when I get on the ground was at the Adweek Accenture house, and there's folks
nice.
From Disney product innovation. Talking about immersive experiences, talking about the augmented reality Disney tests that they've run and how they produce it and what it takes to distribute this kind of new media format. So yeah, the innovation is happening. New creative formats are emerging. I think the Apple Vision Pro, metaverse, you know, the kind of like first real dips of consumerization into those new immersive worlds that we've seen over maybe the last 18 months. Like you have to be honest with ourselves. And it's really only been, 18 months, kind of this hype curve of Apple Vision Pro, Meta Quest 3 kind of hitting mass market adoption, selling more head units. So now there's more content. Now there's more content producers. Now there's more eyeballs looking at the content. Here comes the media. Here comes the advertisers. Here comes the brand storytellers. And I think another important point on that, and I think these are good Web3 vibes, lessons learned, people who have kind of dabbled in that world understanding that you cannot show up in the metaverse with some coupon discount bullshit, that it has got to be your brand. Like, what do you stand for? Who are you? What do you do? Why should I care? And then I'd be willing to put my digital dollars where my mouth is.
Well, and that's a great point, because we have to cover on this show. Now, if I'm trying to retrace, let's go back, like maybe I want to say 2 years, that would be coming up. Like if we go 2 years ago today, we were coming up talking about the NFT summer. Remember this? Like this was, and everyone that I knew who had been in tech, I mean, how many times you gave me a little show pony? I'm talking to you about a warp with the idea, the Zed Run, the idea of an AI engineered music track, and the question marks that we started having of, okay, well now let's start. And we didn't even know the words back then. We didn't know to call that an agent. Right. Or an operator. That's now this more common parlance for how people view their AI assistants. But that AI, the agent, was contributing, or in some cases, 100% responsible for the creation of new media content, right? Could be images, but then that whole idea of music. And my buddy was heading out to South by Southwest 2 years ago. Shout out to Chris McGarry to talk about Warp Sound and to get that thing going. And so so many early movers, Starbucks. I went down that Starbucks rabbit hole of their metaverse because I just couldn't believe that it would be so thin and terrible. And we talked about it on the show that you said you cannot veil a coupon or some interactive CD-ROM experience from literally the 90s behind this veil of, oh, it's the metaverse, and you have to go and talk to the lady who's roasting the beans and watch a video and answer quizzes to get points to maybe get a half of a latte. But now my question for you is, how many of those things that we talked about 2 years ago that really had their stumbles and their fits and their starts, and are they coming back? We saw McDonald's going hard, but as no one's talking NFT, no one's talking programmatic audio, video, is that those parlor tricks? Are those no longer part of the language?
No. And in fact, some of the follow-up emails I had going around today, I had to reread one of the emails because we were talking about blockchain-enabled media, and we were not talking and using the words blockchain or NFT or Web3 or talking about decentralization. We were talking about ownership of intellectual property. And the rest of what I just described was implied. And that there was a certain level of, we now know the new economic rails. When I start this and say the gold rush, the new economies that are being created, I've called this on the show, new economies are being created. And that's why, to me, Austin at an epicenter there of creators, both those creating software, those creating software as a service, those creating film and television, those creating music, or those creating short films that they need funding for, where in a typical world, you would use, a Kickstarter and you would send people to your GoFundMe to fund your production, right? To get this story out to the world. Well, if I'm going to donate to a short film production, I'm going to give a $20 bill at the door to support this small artist and this thing that they've created, but right. I don't get any equity in it. I don't own it.
You don't get any fractional ownership. You're more of a patron.
Exactly. But couldn't I, or shouldn't I? And maybe that film gets submitted to Cannes and goes on to win awards. Wouldn't it be nice for the artist to have a digital receipt with which to reward their early adopters, to reward those who believed in them from the beginning, those who, quote, invested in this artist as a creator? And that's the vibe. Nobody's talking NFTs, nobody's talking blockchain, nobody's using the word metaverse, but it is about the creator story and this creator economy and B2B brands now accepting and embracing the creator economy. And I think about that and I'm like, what does that mean? B2B brands embracing the creator economy. What it means is that businesses
The Accenture house. You just said it.
To have humans talking to humans. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, boots on the ground. It's me talking to you, and we find how we then use those tools to create and collaborate together. And I'm feeling very bullish about coming out of that conference.
Well, and you definitely seem refreshed and re-energized. I mean, what's fascinating to me about this, and we have spoken at length about how there are these market cycles where historically we as a American population of technologists, let's just say, and Americans, you get hung up on the format for a period of time. And then the content emerges, and the content always emerges. The media emerges as something that feels revolutionary, right? But the format is something that for at least some period of time feels like the revolution before people realize, oh, no. That was a mechanism. It is a way for me to provide content to you. It may have these new updated features that are a part of that, but hey, everyone, we have matured and we're no longer focused on the format. And I feel like those cycles have just gotten smaller and smaller, because if you look at radio was a format, and it became this thing where it was in everyone's word. We're going to the radio music hall, and what is it? Was a guy on a stage at a desk with a microphone. It's the radio, and he sits there saying, "Welcome, everyone, Americans everywhere. We're on the radio, on the air, on the airwaves." And then it goes on to television, and then you got to put something on TV. Are you on TV spot? How about TV? And then one day people stop saying the word television because it's just a big black piece of plastic and glass on your wall, or there's a million different ways things can get to it because of apps and whatever, that you don't even speak of it as the format, right? And then you go into things like all of our crazy blockchain and our NFTs and everything. And instead of spending 10, 20, 30 years talking about blockchain, NFTs, and the format, apparently within less than two, you're back at South by and no one's even uttering acronyms. It's now, no, that is just what is going on under the surface. And now all this amazing stuff, these content creators are allowed to come out. The fact that the Accenture house, literally Accenture, is not a brand that I think of as being even remotely sexy ever. And yet they're the guys there hosting these huge parties and Disney's hanging out.
It was awesome. I feel like you're right. People now starting to, and we talked about this. You can't be talking about the metaverse. Nobody wants to hear.
No one wants to use the word metaverse the same way they don't want to hear VHS or Blu-ray.
I think that having now the understanding of what that means, and then, as I said, it was great to get out of DC. But I will say that the undercurrent of deregulation and the undercurrent of I could issue a tokenized version of my artwork, of my project, on some decentralized exchange, and I could sell it to anyone who has a Web3 wallet, or hell, at this point, even PayPal, right? You can log in with Apple Wallet. That's the point, I guess. The rails are just going to get integrated, but the change for the artist is massive.
The format doesn't matter. Is it PayPal? Is it Apple Pay? Does the artist get money? If the answer is yes, then the artist continues to create.
Right. And can survive and can thrive as an artist, as a creator. And I don't know, it makes me very proud that we are rolling into 104. And we didn't set out to do it that way, but I feel very confident now in our ability to create this format. And that's why I was going like this. I was like, video podcasts. YouTube announces in the past week or so that video podcasts, quote unquote, what does that mean? Are we on the radio? Are we on video? Are we doing a podcast? I'm not quite sure, but we're sure on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button.
Like and subscribe, please. Thank you.
Everywhere you get your video podcast, I feel like it is a format, and it's a format that is now the number one consumed media format on YouTube. Well, why is that? Well, because I can trust that it's you talking. It's not an AI. It's not fake. It's not generated. I feel like I've done this bit here on the show, which is this is really us talking this stuff through.
I think it's me talking. Half the time it's hard to know. But like what you're just saying is actually, it's a perfect, and to put a punctuation mark. When you were making the circle with that, didn't know what you were implying, but now I do. But the idea that there is now in an environment where the creators and the experts become kings again, format has to fade away. So I look at some of my young people, children, and today, call them they're middle schoolers or high schoolers. If given a choice to watch something, they would likely choose to watch, let's say they love video games, they love playing Brawl Stars. They want to watch a creator, someone who is on YouTube, who is a very good Brawl Stars player, but who also makes mistakes and makes cool videos, talk about their experience with Brawl Stars. So what is our experience? Well, our experience is with technology and with Web3 and with AI and with all these different things over many, many years. And we enjoy talking about it. And there are people who want to listen to and watch people like you and me talk about it, which is fascinating. And someday this format will move on, and maybe YouTube doesn't exist in some future state. Maybe it is all on the blockchain. Maybe it does all end up going into what we remember as something called a metaverse like experience, but it will cease to matter. And when the new format comes, so does the wave of new creators. We've all heard, one of the things that I'm always struck by is the, at times, inability of creators to transcend formats. That there are times when someone who is an Instagram goddess or god can't figure out TikTok. There's someone who's on TikTok and they can't figure out the next thing. And because they're hung up on the format. I think one of the most important challenges, and one that you probably saw at South by, is that people, I think very, very smartly, are avoiding that conversation. Like, don't speak the word metaverse. Like, the Disney people are never going to say those words. It's not their words. Like, they're never going to say YouTube. That's Google's word. Like, there's all these, suddenly in this crazy new creator economy, there are pitfalls you can fall into, which is pigeonholing yourself into a format. And I think the kind of creators that transcend all those formats are ones who are going to eventually be top of mind to people who are making decisions about whatever it is they're watching information about.
And look, I think I had a lot of exposure with brand marketers, creators, the decision makers at those companies who are responsible for film and television commercials. And if you are responsible for a multinational brand and you need to create as a B2B, right? That's what commercials are. It's like the format ceases to matter. B2B influencers. Well, B2B influencers has typically looked like commercials, even for businesses who are trying to get, a human to know who they are. Like, Boeing advertises on TV. I'm not buying anything from Boeing, but if I worked at a government contractor, I might want to know what they're up to. Is that B2B influencer marketing? Kind of. My point is that the stories that these brands tell, and it sounds so trite, and I pause and I almost cringe because, I'm not a fluffy brand marketer. I'm a technologist who grew up in digital marketing and cut my teeth on SEO and data driven eyeballs and metrics and CPMs and advertising and target audiences.
Format.
And all of a sudden, all that matters in this new omni-channel world, where the format can be liquid, the content can be liquid. That's a Matthew Lorraine. I will not take credit for that, but the content is liquid. It can morph into any format. As long as I've got it on chain, my AI agent can translate this thing into every multimedia that has ever been created or that will ever be created in the future. And if I have ownership over that, of what I create, and it's a damn good story, then you've built a brand.
Yeah, and I mean, my gosh, what is killing me inside slightly is that our original brief in the first iteration of the company that I co-founded, called This Moment, had something called the Distributed Engagement Channel, which was described as an on-demand omni-channel engagement experience. And it was the year 2008 ish, 2009, 2010. So very early. And our whole message was a brand marketer, pick Disney, one of our first customers. A brand marketer wants to have an omni-channel experience on this thing called the internet. Okay. Well, what does that mean? Well, in those days, there are these silos, right? There was this thing called Facebook, separate from a thing called YouTube, separate from a thing called Flickr, from MySpace at the time, et cetera, Twitter. And all of those companies don't like each other. And they all want to have a relationship with Disney that's unique. And in so doing, creates a really difficult field to navigate, because then if you're part of the Walt Disney Company, you have to create messages that are bespoke and special, and not just the messaging, the words and the look and the feel, but even like the number of pixels to put in that little box on that web page, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Format.
Just all it's all formats. And how we tackled it was, we had an entire team of human beings called the production team, who had to make sure that we built a single experience for the Walt Disney Company, and then stuck it in a very liquid way, in a distributed way, into Facebook, into YouTube, into MySpace, these places. So the brand controlled the message, and it just worked across all the places. Well, how did it work? Was it magic? Well, no, there was like literally 30 humans sitting right there who had to optimize for every possible browser and every format and every pad and phone and you name it. The format is what ultimately sunk the good ship SS this moment, because it's too costly to do that. But fast forward to today, here's my brief. I can just dust it off, show it to you. You're like, omnichannel, check. Content's liquid. Literally, we use those words in this brief. Insert, no offense to Lorraine, check. And on, check. And who are our partners? Google and Facebook and whatever. And then we would just say, well, how does it work? Well, we have an AI agent who just delivers the message. And this ugly word format, you don't even have to say it anymore. Right. You don't have to say it anymore. So sometimes you're too early, sometimes you're too late. We were definitely too early on that. But the fact that today we actually can ignore the format, it sounds like we're coming to that precipice of ignoring the format.
Well, and that is the word interoperability, which you will not hear again in the common everyday business vernacular. You will not hear people talk about interoperability, but that is, what the chain. I don't know how people are going to navigate through this. I'm fascinated as a cultural creative anthropologist. Like, I'm interested to hear, like I was saying, I had to reread this email because we were talking about blockchain, but I was like, she never used the word like minting the asset, but like, that's what we're doing, right? Like,
or on chain, even that is, or maybe it does eventually go to that, because at some point people refer to things being online. Maybe online just stays the way it is, because
if it's online, it's on chain.
If it's online, it's on, because if interoperability is a word that no one says anymore, because that is a long gone idea, that it's understood. And if you're even in the room talking about it, then obviously you're antiquated, because no one even speaks the words, because there is no scenario where it wouldn't be everywhere. Omni-channel almost again, we used it in a brief almost 20 years ago. That's a really old word. But sometimes they say, you want a new magic trick? Go dust off an old magic book. And that's why online, on chain, I mean, who knows, maybe broadband comes back into play. We'll start talking about 5G again.
I need some 5G AI up in here. Yeah, man, vibes are good out of South by.
What was one of the things you saw that was like that, where you opened your eyes a little bit, where you weren't expecting it, the aha thing? And anything, it could be tech, it could be, form, it could be, I can't say the word formatting, but it could be the way people couch something. Just curious, like do you see the next trend heading? And is it really just about a content story? Is it giving storytellers that, shot in the arm, that steroid blast, and saying, now you guys, there are no limits to the stories you can tell, and the cost is not an issue, because we can shore it up with, other tech.
That, I think, the use of AI to create media across all formats, and that the best creative houses, the big agencies and the small agencies, but the smartest ones, are thinking very long-term and very strategically about how they use AI in their workflow and in their process. And do they own the inputs that they use to put into their agent? And do they own the outputs? And how can they control the various formats? So I went to an Adobe session, and they were talking about they created a spot for, I think it was for a P&G brand, like a body soap or something. And once they filmed the spot, they were able to use AI to do like voice dubbing and translation. So instead of having to have actors actually film the commercial in 12 different languages, they were able to create these 12 different versions of the ad using AI. And he was more talking about it as a tool of efficiency. They still had to do all the things that they would have already done. They still needed a real actor. They still needed a real shoot. They still needed the full storyboarding and pre-production and post-production and sound and editing and color correcting and all the things. But once they had a final product, they then, along with their client, felt comfortable enough to then use AI tools to create personalized variations, whether that was language or otherwise. I think also those sizes, like he actually talked about that. Like a lot of the Adobe AI plugins have simply been kind of, do it one version. Canva's now doing this. A lot of the tools are doing this where it's like one click and I get my LinkedIn banner, I get my Twitter banner, it resizes it for Instagram stories. It gives me the TikTok 16:9. It gives me the square version for LinkedIn.
It's overwhelming, like the choices like that. And they don't let you just hit the button and say all, because they want you to still, I don't know, like, do you add vignette around the edges to like circle in the subject? And if you do that on a square format, it looks great. Sometimes it doesn't look great when it's like, the 16:9. I find it very fascinating still that those guys, Adobe's, I don't know who makes Canva, but I use Adobe Express all the time. And they give you 20 choices because they want to be very specific, the format that you output in. Yeah. Adobe may never, ever get out of the format game. And maybe your AI agent is the only one who ever interacts with it, so you don't have to worry about it. But to me, it's something that is dying. It should just be, like you say, hit once and it goes everywhere, and it knows how to make it look good.
Adobe Firefly, they were definitely pumping at this session. So in terms of the use of AI, I think the part that I got, I have used Adobe Firefly. I have not used it extensively compared to some of the use of my other AI generative tools. But the thought that part of that was interesting was sort of, they built it, it seems, maybe somebody else could pipe up in the comments here, or maybe you've got experience, or I'll do my own research, but it feels like Adobe Firefly as a generative AI layer over top of the rest of the Adobe Creative Suite. So meaning it's almost like they literally built a layer on top of their existing screens that kind of, allows you to generate a video background over here in Premiere, or a soundtrack over here in, After Effects or Studio, and then bring it over in here to Photoshop and generate a still image. But the AI tool itself is kind of floating over top of the full Creative Cloud. I found that
I see.
Almost like Microsoft Clippy. Like, I could jump between PowerPoint and Word, and it's like my little AI agent over here.
Clippy was the first operator.
There you are.
Because the AI, he's not an AI agent. He's the operator. He's basically standing there on top of the stack. And when you come in and say, I need this for this, for this, and he just figures it out. I mean, that should be what Clippy does. That should be whatever the Adobe version of Clippy is. It's the operator who knows how to operate its set of machinery. Your agent works on your behalf to do various things, but the operator, you need an operator. You need an operator everywhere, from your home to your company to your government. You need someone who knows how to work the machine.
I know we've stayed away from the politics, but there is still a lot going on in here in DC.
That was my little soft handoff to you to just drop in anything. Doge
was definitely on people talking about when I said I was from DC. Oh, how's the vibe in DC? Oh, that's it's. I've only been back now a few days, but spring is springing, and the new moon has come. The blood moon has come and gone. I'm not sure where things sit in terms of the current regulatory, what's on the docket, and haven't really plugged myself back into it. So I'm really not.
Well, well, from afar, what I think is interesting is, politically speaking, there was a pretty strong rush, like we talked about, that there's an advantage to pulling a lot of levers simultaneously. If you're in the business of testing and pushing and seeing, where is pain felt, right? As a dentist, you poke along the gums, and as soon as you hear the person, that's sensitive. Oh, okay. Well, now I know how to work this, work that. The thing that's really fascinating is it feels like there is a strong wave of highly coordinated market manipulation going on with the inflows and outflows of money, because the stories of the inflows and outflows of cash going to what are called the spot Bitcoin ETFs or the spot Ethereum ETFs and out. And then at the same time, stories of Michael Saylor, this one I find fascinating, is basically one buy away. Michael Saylor being the CEO of the company formerly known as MicroStrategy. It's now just called Strategy, BTC, which stands for Bitcoin Treasury Company. Again, we're playing with acronyms. We're playing with formats again. But we'll have 500,000 Bitcoin with the next buy, which is far and away, if you know, there's going to be 21 million total discovered by the year 2140. So more than 115 years from now, about 150 years from now. And you know that 3 to 4 million of them are lost, because we've heard stories of hard drives and garbage dumps. The most famous one being that guy in Ireland who keeps trying to get the pontiff or whatever to go in and let him dig it out. And then you have a whole bunch of other people with a little bit, but this one guy has 500,000. And to say that it wouldn't be advantageous for him and his company to keep buying them at a lower price would be insane, right? Everyone wants to buy Bitcoin at a lower price. And to have more heat and more inflows and outflows going, what it shows me is that is there washing of money that's happening? Because if you say, oh, the largest inflows into Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETFs, we just, $5 billion in the last 2 weeks, like, wow. And the price went down. How exactly is that working? We talked about this, selling people the IOU of something versus the actual something. So I have a piece of paper that says I have some gold, or I have a gold bar that may or may not be in Fort Knox. It creates an environment where it's very, very easy to suppress the price, because as soon as it starts to get to a certain pace, a certain rate of growth, it will be very difficult for them to actually rein it back in again. If Bitcoin goes to 150 to 200,000, just the way that the mathematics, the technical analysis would work of the entire world. Remember, this is not America buying Bitcoin, the world. If you don't think that foreign governments are loading up right now, Russia is loading up right now on Bitcoin. So is China. They're not just sitting around not taking advantage of the dip. And yet here the retail investors like us, oh God, it's at 80K. Should I sell? My friend of mine called me. Should I sell? I'm like, well, do you need money? Do you need money right now? If you do, I get it. Go for it. But dude, it's not like it's going to go. But what if it goes to zero? It's just 110. It's like at a certain point, you can't explain to people how this, based on the maneuverings of all the people in power currently, it really should only go up at least for the next 3 years and 10 months. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen in 2028, but right now, everyone, you're bullish on content creating out of South by. These guys are bullish out of the Oval Office with every weird derivative product they can come up with as fast as possible. So to me, that's the weird. We're in this inflection point now where it's like, SEC, we're firing all of you. IRS, don't need you either. By the way, we're all launching meme coins. It feels very disingenuous to the whole point of crypto, but this is the world we live in. Humans want to control, and they're going to try to.
Yeah, I think it solidifies that it's real. It's here. Bitcoin is different than all the others. Pay attention. And we've said it. We're in the wild, wild west now. The wild, wild South by Southwest, and it is financial advice at this point. If Eric Trump is out there saying you'll thank me later on X, Now
I'm actually still waiting for old Eric Trump to thank me later because he told me to go get some Ethereum and it's like lower than it's been in forever. Yet the inflows and outflows for the Ethereum ETF, spot ETF, are like bigger than ever. Someone's getting undercut. Maybe it's Russian based. That's why I don't like it. I don't know.
Start to look for the other triggers. I'll give you one that's on my radar and then we can wrap it up here. One that's on my radar is that today, I believe in the next hour or so, the astronauts stranded are coming back home and should touch down this evening. And I find it fascinating. It's SpaceX to the rescue. This is the I forget what's the I don't remember the name of the shuttle at this point, but
is it the Falcon that goes up to get him?
Crew 9. So the Crew 9 splashdown should be this evening. I don't have we're recording, it's like 5 p.m. Eastern. So I think it's in the next couple of hours, but I have a strange suspicion that could be a real rallying cry from Elon, because a couple weeks ago, and everyone loves to say, oh, the rocket blew up. People love to come up to me and be like, oh, your boy, the rocket blew up. And I'm like, yeah, he's also successfully launched and relaunched the same rocket more than once, which nobody else has ever done. Anyway, my point being that I think SpaceX, I think Elon will take the W, and I think you might see, I'm making a little bit of a prediction here, but you might see an interesting vibe of, are we going to the moon? No, not yet, but we're going to get a little ride. We just came back from the moon. Maybe before we go to Mars, we have to come back down. You see the analogy I'm going for here?
I do. The dip. We're gonna buy the dip. Literally the Crew 9 dipping into the ocean, and then we're gonna slingshot ourselves up to Mars.
I think that's what it proves. It proves he can do this. It proves SpaceX is the champion. Boeing, literally, we talked about them here, but it's their failed mission, right? Like at the end of the day, the corporate enterprise that was holding the government contract to safely bring these astronauts back to Earth failed. And who swoops in like a wild, wild west cowboy, throwing his lasso up there and pulling those astronauts down?
Oof.
SpaceX and Elon Musk.
And that's right. To circle back around to the opening, you're talking about Boeing, watching Boeing, narrative, Boeing storytelling on the television, on the radio, right? These are the guys who made these planes that used to fly around, and it was like the captain of the plane at Boeing. He almost was like a military hero just for flying you to Chicago. And now, there's notion that, well, Boeing couldn't. They tried to get their Star Cruiser, Starliner, whatever it was called, but NASA says no, we can't use this Boeing thing. It's not good enough, and so we're going to have to send up the like you said, the Hail Mary from our new savior and hero, old Mr. Musk. And let's also not forget, not to throw one more little, bee back in your bonnet, but the quote unquote International Space Station, which everyone has been talking about, which they add on to, which they've, been going up and back to like without incident for a while, right? This is sort of the first time there was ever this big emergency. But who's usually in that space station? It's usually American astronauts and Russian, can't say astronaut, cosmonauts, right? And the Russians and the Americans are just chilling up there, looking down on Earth at like, what's with these donkeys down there? How come they can't just come and get us? We've been up here for way too long. Is it like, it's Butch? Is it Butch Cassidy and the Sunni Kid? Isn't that their names? Are they bringing? Is the cowboy bringing back Butch Cassidy and the Sunni Kid? I think he is. It's Butch Wilmore and Sunni Williams. Butch Cassidy and the Sunni Kid. You heard it here first. Lasso roped in the OK Corral, and they're being pulled down in the Doge Corral, pulled back down to Earth. Well, I really do hope that they get back safe. I think you're right. The timing of this, talk about a perfect moment to kind of kick the spring off. With a real feel-good story about American innovation. That's all you can say.
That's right. The space race will be on. I think and that has worked in the past from an economic perspective. And I think no one better to do it and tell the story than Elon and Trump right now. It is good to catch up here. We are flying into the back half of March, Q1 almost coming to end. Let's do it again next week and keep it rolling.
I'll talk to you next week, Michael. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
That's all the time we have for this episode of Off the Record, On the Rocks. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. See you next time for more news and all things crypto and Web3.